Hi, so we had 3 amazing days at the ICCA Congress, and it is my absolute pleasure that Sebastian Lukic has agreed to summarize the highlights of the conference for us, and I'm excited to meet him now. Hi Sebastian.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Victoria.
Who's in with you?
Oh, thank you so much.
So it was 3 days, lots of panels. Why don't you give us an overview of the ICCA Congress?
Taking inspiration from a movement in Scottish philosophy in the 18th century, the ICCA Congress focused on the age of enlightenment in arbitration. So spanning 3 days, the Congress looked at a range of issues in this context, such as the reform of investment arbitration, or issues like the confidentiality and transparency in commercial arbitration, but also on new subject matters, new fields where arbitration will become increasingly relevant, such as the energy transition. So overall, there were 15 panels over 3 days, some taking place in parallel, some taking place as a plenary session.
Yeah. So what were your highlights?
I think overall I had 4 highlights, and immediately in the first panel. The first panel explored a bit the historic roots of arbitration, and Christopher Thomas Casey and Lucy Reed, they looked at the historic Alabama claims. So certainly as a fan of international arbitration and public international law, that was the first highlight for me. The second highlight was a panel called Once Upon a Time in Arbitration.
Okay.
And the panel featured former ICCA judge Bruno Simmer and 2 professors of international law, Kristen Tams and Chester Brown. And they looked at the development of the ILC articles and how they apply in the context of investment arbitration and what the fault lines of the application are in investment arbitration. So that was certainly my second big highlight.
And is that new? That has been done for a while?
It has, but they looked at the issues very critically from a perspective of international law, because the articles sometimes apply essentially to state-to-state disputes, whereas in the context of arbitration they applied in the investor-state context. And the question was whether some provisions of the articles can apply in that context, or whether they're only limited to state-to-state disputes.
And can they apply?
Certainly there is some controversy about that, since looking at the text of the provisions, such as Article 31, they only focus on state-to-state disputes. But some of those provisions are part of customary international law, and so the position taken sometimes is that they do apply in the investor-state context.
Highlight indeed. How about highlight number 3?
My third highlight was a panel discussing regional themes, constitutionalism and populism in Latin America and Europe. And that panel was interesting because it discussed ICCA case law, Achmea Comstroy, on the interplay between EU law and investment law, certainly a very teasing theme in the world of investment arbitration.
And highlight number 4?
Highlight number 4 was a panel on the young practitioners and the future. And the special thing about that panel was that we had smaller groups discussing future topics in arbitration, and my highlight was the group discussing climate change and arbitration, since this is a topic which is now certainly of concern for everyone and should be the center of any congress and conference currently.
Oh, I agree. Let's make sure we have a future in arbitration and elsewhere. Sebastian, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks.